One thing that doesn't suffer from a lack of coverage on local news broadcasts is crime. It's been a particularly tough stretch recently with the shooting death of an Albuquerque middle school student by what police say was one of his classmates. There was also a deadly shooting at a sports bar in the city's popular Uptown area. Now, those high-profile crimes are part of a record-setting year for homicides here in Albuquerque and have sparked a renewed interest in crime legislation, as well as another deployment of state police to Albuquerque. And Sophie, it's practically, human nature to ask what could have been done to stop something like the school shooting at Washington Middle School. But in this case, the accused shooter's father had a history of irresponsible gun ownership, as we're learning now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that particular shooting was predictable in advance, although there has been some talk of other students seeing the student with a gun.
The shooter's father, had a history. He had a 2018 fight at Highlands, which he shot a man. I mean, his mom, attacked another mother in a classroom.
We might have predicted that he would shoot someone at a school, but not necessarily his kid. But what we do see is there's been longstanding resistance in the state to legislation that would make the parent more responsible in situations like this for leaving guns unlocked, et cetera. Unfortunately, in my mind, it's the legislation that's been proposed is not necessarily strong enough. I mean, it's a misdemeanor that's been proposed under what's now called Benny's Law, but it is at least a start. But there does not appear to be a lot of appetite, despite many of the high-profile shootings we've seen around the country and in this state, for stronger regulation in those circumstances. We know children do not have fully developed brains, and we acknowledge that their parents should be responsible for decision making for children, but somehow we fail to establish that parents will be responsible for this type of decision making. Certainly not at the level that seems to be necessary.
I should remind folks, as we record this, we're also flagging the unfortunate situation with 2 officers shot in Northeast Albuquerque Thursday morning. So we're considering that as well as we discuss this. And Daniel, let me move on here. That New Mexico has a red flag law on the books to temporarily seize guns from people deemed a threat to themselves or others. It's been used 4 times since it went into effect. And I should point out that the 2018 shooting wasn't even charged by APD. It predates the seizure law. But is there an opening for more effective use of that particular law here?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's an opening for a more effective use of that law. I think that it just begs the question of why are we not using the laws we have on the books today?
But that's the one we have on the books. Let's talk about that particular one. We have a red flag law that was vigorously debated for exactly these kind of situations. Is this not the right time?
Yeah, but I don't know what you mean that law is for these situations. The red flag law was going to keep the kid from being around a gun. I mean, the problem is that the kid's got a problem, right? And the kid hasn't learned, in my opinion, that there's consequences for your actions. And in 2018, he saw his father shoot somebody or knows that his father shot somebody and nothing happened to the guy. He didn't get prosecuted. So that tells a young developing mind that level of escalation in a violent situation is okay. Because listen, my dad did it and nothing happened to my dad. And so I think it comes back to not the fact that we should be expanding laws and putting new laws on the books. We have a problem with enforcing the current laws we have on the books and holding true criminals accountable. We're more interested with talking about getting people out of jail with no bail, getting people to trials really quick so that we don't hold them in jail any longer. And yet we're having this recidivism rate amongst these people. A lot of these individuals that we're talking about, once they are finally captured or shot in New Mexico, it's rare to see a story that we're like, oh my gosh, Gene Grant is the guy that shot somebody. He has no criminal past. I mean, it seems to be every time we find this out, it's individuals with a lengthy criminal record, with a revolving door policy in our state and in our country now that seems to be, the idea is, the rights of the criminal trump the rights of the victim. And the answer seems to be, well, let's go create more laws. And we all know this, the only people that laws are going to be followed by are people who wish to follow the laws. And these individuals are not law-abiding citizens. So I think, before we start saying, let's put another law in the book, we need to look back at why these situations are happening when you're the son or the daughter or the family member of someone who gets away with committing a violent crime and doesn't even have to go to court over it. That's a problem.
Hey, Dan, we're just getting word that Republican leadership is calling for some talks about crime legislation, meaning not supporting it, but they just want to get their voice in special session. Sorry, my fault there. To talk about this. Your initial gut reaction? Is this worth a special session in the cost and everything?
I mean, listen, I don't know what law, to me, this problem with gun violence, it's not just a New Mexico problem. I mean, look what's happening in Chicago and New York, and it's a country problem. In New Mexico, I think that, you're going to have a hard time anytime. I mean, we're a majority rural state. And even in pretty Democrat areas, when these folks get up and go hunting and they do the things they need to do, I think that there's going to be a serious conversation. I hope there'll be a serious conversation about, before we pass 25 new laws, why are we not enforcing the laws that are currently on the books? Maybe giving the DAs and the judges more discretion to put folks to handle these cases, other than making mandates that they be turned out and we wait trial and hope they don't commit another crime.
Jessica, I'm curious how this all rings in your part of the world in southeast New Mexico. I mean, we're talking about something sort of Albuquerque specific here, but how does this hit your ear?
Well, first of all, let me give my condolences to the family and friends of Benny Hargrove. It was such a sad situation to hear. And even if it happens in northern New Mexico, we're all affected by it throughout the entire state. I will say that I'm along the same vein as Dan on this. I think people are going to look at this, the proposed bill, and think of it as another attack on their right to bear arms, especially in New Mexico. You do have a population where we own guns. We use them for sport and recreation and for self-protection. And I think that I'm with Dan when we say that it's a moment now to look at what can we do, not about gun possession or securing our guns, but really take a look at what are the root causes of violence that just happen to involve a gun. We're in a state where there is a severe lack of mental health resources that can contribute to this type of thing. We're in a state where we have a huge population that's below the poverty line, that are more vulnerable to domestic violence at home, and where kids are placed in a system or in a situation where they can be exposed to violence and act that out in their own in schools, in their own societies, in their own social circles. So it's in our view, better to pause and take a look, not at how do we punish gun owners who, for the most part, I think some might argue are responsible gun owners, but how do we address the violence the issues that lead to this type of violence?
Good points there. Yeah, Sophie, is there a problem with violent culture in Albuquerque? And what I mean by that is, one of the relatives of the sports bar shooting said at a news event there would be, quote, "be justice either way," end quote. I mean, that's a hard quote right there. You can't begrudge her certainly that emotion, but is that a response we can live with? I mean, it sounds like revenge is in the air here.
That is a very hard quote, and not knowing more about the context of that shooting makes it difficult, I think, to understand exactly what the dynamic is. One of the things that I think is really tough, going back to what Jessica was bringing up about the need for social services, the need for better intervention and Dan as well, with people who we know may be on the path to violent behavior, is that it seems that the same legislators, the same advocates who are saying, no, this is a Second Amendment right and we can't do anything about the guns, are also opposing increased funding for social services, for intervention, and for health care for individuals, for instance, with mental health concerns. And to be clear, because I think it's important to say this every time, when we talk about individuals with mental health concerns, folks who experience mental health issues are more likely to be victims of crime than to perpetuate it.
Thank you.
But so how do we overcome this? That it is the same loud group of folks who are saying no to this, and then on the other side, no to these other solutions as well. We have not gotten past that, and I don't see when we will.